It is with teary eyes that we greet you today because the 2024 high school football season is now officially 100% in the books. Super Seven's over. Alabama Mississippi All-Star Game's over. Gary, I know you've had some very depressing evenings lamenting the conclusion of the year.
Yeah, I mean, teary-eyed because it's over, but happy that it happened. And we'll get probably with this podcast, you'll probably maybe not players, but you'll get some parents with some teary eyes for happy reasons as they find out that their son had a great year on the football field and their hard work and commitment have paid off.
We'll also get some hateful messages because we don't know what we're talking about, but you take the good with the bad sometimes. So this is the Under the Lights High School Football Podcast presented by SYNLawn all fall. We've had a great season. The preseason, we kind of set the stage. During the year, we got to see all the great action. We talked about it the whole way, had some great interviews along the way. But the purpose of being here today is to unveil the 2024 Under the Lights Starnes Media All South Metro football team. I can assure you that it was very, very difficult to put this list together. There's a lot of names to go through, a lot of amazing players, great seasons were had. So we're gonna unveil them all here on this show. So stay tuned, and we're gonna go through the lists. But first, before we dive in, I gotta tell you about our friends at SYNLawn Alabama. They brought you under the lights all season long. You've heard their name over and over again. That's because they're the go-to for all things artificial turf. Whether that means you're looking for an upgrade to your backyard, you want to create a pet-friendly space, or you want to enhance your golf game on the custom putting green, SYNLawn has the solution for you. They've got top-notch installations for both residential and commercial use and wholesale turf sales. SYNLawn Alabama is the premier choice for artificial turf in the state. Check out their showroom, 2018 Old Montgomery Highway, or you can give them a call, 205-590-9549. That's SYNLawn Alabama, our great partner with Under the Lights all season long. All right, Gary, so the first thing we're going to do, we're going to let you guys in on who our overall player of the year is. Take a look. All right, we are glad to be joined by a guy that had a terrific year. That is Brock Bradley, the Spain Park High School quarterback. Brock, we're here to let you know today that you have been selected as the Under the Lights All South Metro Player of the Year. So congratulations to you for that. Just kind of tell us about the year, man. You started hot and kept it rolling all the way to the third round of the playoffs.
Yes, sir. Well, I mean, highly anticipated year. A lot of work that, we put in behind closed doors to, ultimately have, a great season. Obviously it didn't end the way we, wanted it to, but just super proud of, what we were able to do, not only as a team, but as a community. And just to represent Spain Park in that way, it was great.
Brock, I'm curious how it feels. I know it's award season at this point, so I'm curious how it feels to win this award in particular, and how you balance celebrating awards and award season and knowing you've got another year and maintaining that humbleness to and that hunger for next year.
Yes, sir. I think you said it great. I mean, it's important to, sit back and, realize what happened. And I like to, sit down and kind of evaluate it. And yeah, it's certainly, I'm super blessed and honored to receive, all these awards. But at the end of the day, it's back to work, and, you gotta find ways to get better and, have a better year next year.
Yeah, so you just wrapped up your junior year. Kind of take me back to so towards the end of your freshman year, coach kind of gives you the reins a little bit, says, "Hey, we're going to start getting you in there, give you some reps." Getting a start at the very end of that year. Kind of take me through the process of that time of your career to now, and just how much better you've gotten.
Yes, sir. I feel like I'm light years ahead of, where I was as a freshman or eighth grader, obviously. But, Coach V did a great job. As I was transitioning as an eighth grader at Barry, I was always practicing with the varsity. And so that kind of got me acclimated to, the speed of the game and playing with older, bigger, stronger, faster guys. And, I think that ultimately paid off. And then, obviously year after year, you get more comfortable, with the speed of the game and, just executing, as a quarterback. So I think every year, I've gotten a little better and, in the off season tried to tweak different things to, ultimately make my game better every year.
For this past season, like obviously we've talked a lot about the success all throughout this year, reeling off 12 straight wins to get this year going. But what was maybe the one mindset key you held on to all year, like that one thing week to week that that really seemed to help you and help the team?
Yes, sir. I think, just thinking like, man, we got to start fast. And Coach V preaches that to us. I feel like in a lot of games early, we didn't jump on people early. And, as the season, got to, the later games, I feel like we did a better job of that. So that, and then just, I think maintaining the weight room has been big for us. It's easier said than done, but, we're in there every week grinding, and I think that really does pay off for us. So just maintaining those two things, I think was, huge for our success this year.
Brock, when you look at your numbers, I mean, you threw for 2,667 yards, 32 touchdowns, 6 more rushing touchdowns. Is it kind of crazy to sit back and think of the stats you guys were able to put up this year?
A little bit, yes, sir. I know Coach V's talked about it a few times, but we were blessed to break the record for scoring last year, and then we actually beat that record again this year for Spain Park history. So it's just been super cool to be able to do that. And kind of leave my mark here, and just wouldn't be able to do it without the guys around me. So credit to those guys that take care of me up front, and then all the talented receivers and coaches we have put us in those positions.
Do you take anything from that Saraland game into the off season and into next season, or do you pretty much wipe the slate clean and say 2025 new start?
I think a little bit of both. You want to go back and watch the film, but another part of you just kind of wants to flush it. So I think you take away, how do we, if we're faced with another game like that, what can we take away? What can we do better in a scenario like that? But then I think also it's important to flush it. We don't just get to start 12-0 again in the round 3 of the playoffs. Like we got to get back 0-0 and start from the top. So I think it's important to look at it and take away some things from the game, but ultimately flush it and start a new season.
All right, Brock, you got Coach V next to you. When's the last time he talked about the weight room?
Well, I'll be in there in about 2 periods here, so I'm prepping my body already to go hit the squat rack.
Awesome.
Nice. I've got a fill in the blank for you real quick.
Okay.
Clemson beats Texas if
Cade Klubnik plays like a Heisman Trophy candidate.
And if he does that, I like their chances. It'll be fun. Hey, just kind of tell us a little bit about, Clemson and what made that the place that you wanted to go.
Yes, sir. I think ultimately it just came down to Coach Sweeney. Like, I just feel like he's one of a kind in college football today. And, location played a little role for me. I know my parents wanted to be close enough to be able to watch me on Saturdays, but really it just came down to the people. And, I've had a chance to build a close relationship with Coach Riley over the past few years, just going to camps and stuff. And I really believe in what they do and how they use quarterbacks in their offense. So just super excited to get up there in a year and go compete for the job.
Good deal. Well, that's Brock Bradley. Brock, congrats on winning our Player of the Year award. This is a really cool accomplishment, I know, for you and your guys. It was a great 2024, and looking forward to 2025.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys.
Congrats to Brock for a terrific season. He certainly earned that honor. All right, Gary. Offensive Player of the Year for the All-South Metro team goes to Mountain Brook running back Stuart Andrews. The junior running back, a phenomenal season for the Spartans. He took the baton from Cole Gamble and just kept running for the Spartans. I mean, just an unbelievable year. He carried it 25 times a game. He ran for 1,805 yards, an unbelievable season for Mountain Brook. You thought the running game might dip a little after the graduation of Cole Gamble, but Stuart Andrews just kept it rolling for them.
Yeah, you run behind a really good Mountain Brook offensive line, and you throw in some moves of your own, and you will thrive in that offense. And Stuart Andrews did more than thrive, like you mentioned. I mean, 1,800-yard season, 23 touchdowns. Hard to argue with that as an offensive player of the year. So well earned, deserved, heck of a year.
Yeah, when you carry the ball 309 times in a season, you might think, hey, you're bound to get some yards when you carry it that many times. But no, he was a workhorse every single game for them and was extremely effective every single Friday night. So Stuart Andrews, Mountain Brook running back, our offensive player of the year. Now time to unveil the defensive player of the year for the Under the Lights All-South Metro team. Gary, I heard there was a really good defense in 7A. I think they were in the Trussville area. Can you confirm?
I can confirm that Hewitt-Trussville was the best defense in Class 7A in 2024.
So with that being said, you would have to imagine that a few guys on that defense were pretty stout this year. So with that being said, the defensive player of the year is going to be Hewitt-Trussville linebacker Parker Floyd. You mentioned it, that Hewitt defense was the best in 7A. They allowed under 10 points per game the entire season. I think 17 was the most they gave up the whole season, and that was in a double overtime game.
Overtime.
Yeah. So Parker Floyd, 105 tackles on the year, extremely productive, great leader out of the middle of that defense. And look, I know this is a Defensive Player of the Year award. He scored 5 touchdowns on offense as well. Pretty great season for him.
Yeah, I mean, Parker is just, he's just a daggone ball player, like you put him wherever and he's productive. And, he's led this team in tackles, I think last year as a sophomore and this year as a junior. Just an incredible year. And like you said, he does it a little bit on both sides of the ball, but dominates on defense. And, that unit as a whole was obviously fantastic this year, the best in 7A, best in the state, the best that Hewitt-Trussville has had in 30 years. So again, well-deserved, earned, and he really, really showed out this year.
Well, good news about all three of the awards we just unveiled. They're all juniors, so if they have great years again next year, we can just hit repeat and not have to work as hard because they'll just do it all again.
There you go.
All right, time to name the coach of the year for the All-South Metro team. And it's hard to go any other route than Hoover head coach Chip English. Chip English took over a chaotic situation in the summer, being named the interim head coach after the resignation of Drew Gilmer, and led the Bucks back to the Class 7A semifinals. They go 10-3 on the year. Chip just really he steadied the ship. He got this team to a point where they were playing some really good football, especially towards the end of the regular season. And in a situation where it all could have gone awry very, very easily, he kept that team together, kept them pushing, and they end up with another double-digit win season.
Yeah, we've said this all throughout the year about how, it's one thing to be named interim and just steady the ship and, kind of keep everybody together. It's a whole nother thing to do that and win the region and win 10 games and go to the Class 7A semifinals. So not only did he steady the ship, that ship moved forward in a big, big way. And I'm glad that we can now talk about him without that interim tag. He is the Hoover head football coach. He did earn that job. And I was glad to see that interim tag, just came off. And now it is literally his ship to steer. And he certainly earned it this year.
Yep. Chip English was introduced as the permanent football coach at Hoover High School at a press conference last week. Really cool to see and excited to see where he takes the Bucks moving forward. All right. So there you have it. Player of the year, offensive and defensive players of the year, and coach of the year. Here on the Under the Lights podcast presented by SYNLawn. What we're going to do here, we're going to run through the teams. You'll see them online later on, but this is your first look at them. Before we get to questions, is it just stats? Is it just team success? Is it just how good is this player on the eye test? How good is it XYZ? It's a combination of all of those things. Some guys are going to have better stats. Some guys are going to be on better teams. Sometimes it's hard to judge. You got a 5A team and a 7A team. But
well, hey, I'm coming with my pitchfork. I'm ready. I've got my pitchfork. I'm coming.
So here are the 11 teams that are considered for the Under the Lights All-South Metro team in alphabetical order. Briarwood, Chelsea, Clay Chalkville, Hewitt-Trussville, Homewood, Hoover, John Carroll, Mountain Brook, Oak Mountain, Spain Park, and Vestavia Hills. So before anybody gets out of shape about that part, those are the 11 schools that the Under the Lights umbrella encompasses. So that's out of the way. There's the disclaimer. I'm sure we'll still get hateful emails, but it's okay. Because the guys that deserve to be on this team, we attempted to honor them, and we're going to highlight their terrific seasons. If you were just in consideration, you had an outstanding year and have much to be proud of. So with that being said, first team on offense, here's how we're going to do this. First team has 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, 5 offensive linemen, 2 athletes, a kicker, a punter, and a specialist. So first team quarterback, we've already heard from him. Spain Park's Brock Bradley, named Player of the Year after an outstanding season. It's hard to argue with 32 passing touchdowns for the quarterfinalist in Spain Park.
Yeah, I mean, more than 2,600 yards passing. You mentioned 32 touchdowns through the air. He had a handful or 6 or so on the ground. 12-0 start. I mean, just a legendary season in that program and getting it back where they really want to be. So well-deserved for him for sure.
Absolutely. Another first-team quarterback is going to be Oak Mountain's Will Odell. What a bounce-back season for this guy. A breakout season during his senior year. Almost 2,000 yards through the air and well more than 1,000 on the ground. Just a dual-threat guy if you've ever seen one. And we saw how tough it was for them last year in 2023. But, man, 2024, Will Odell was really, really impressive leading that Eagles offense.
Yeah, most impressive turnaround, at least for offenses, from one year to the next. I mean, he had over 3,000 all-purpose yards. I mean, rushing and passing combined, and it seemed like every week it was a discussion like, is Will one of the top 4 for the Under the Lights Player of the Week? And a lot of times he was, and he won it. And just a crazy great year for him. Oak Mountain did a lot of big things this year on offense, and he was the main reason why.
Those are your 2 first-team quarterbacks. Let's talk about the 2 first-team running backs. We'll start with Mountain Brook's Stuart Andrews, the Offensive Player of the Year. We talked about it. Over 1,800 yards, 23 rushing touchdowns. Mountain Brook loves to run the football, and they keep finding those guys that can do it.
Yeah, I mean, and he's got another year of this. I mean, is it crazy to think, hey, maybe Stuart guns for 2,000 next year? I don't know. I'm not going to put that on him, but in that system and a guy as talented as he is behind an offensive line and the schemes that they run under Coach Yeager, it's not off the table. So an incredible breakout year, and expect to see him do it again next year.
Another first-team running back, Chelsea's Chase Strassner, ran for over 1,600 yards and scored 17 touchdowns. This guy was one of the breakout players of the year. I mean, not many people had heard of him, and he just comes out, busts onto the scene, and has a big year for that Chelsea offense.
Yeah, that's the exact note I had is, you do a overall player of the year, offensive, defensive player of the year. If you had an award for breakout player of the year, I think it's Chase Strassner, hands down. Just a really great year for him and the Hornets in their first year back in Class 6A.
All right, we've got 3 first-team wide receivers. Let's start with Corey Barber from Spain Park. This guy, wow, he had some huge games. He ends up with 1,429 receiving yards and 17 touchdowns this year on 74 catches. A big reason that the Spain Park offense had the success that it did. He and Brock Bradley were a dynamic tandem.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I still remember near the end of the 2023 season when he was still at Clay Chalkville and seeing some of those flashes in the playoffs of some catches he made, down the stretch in the cold. And then, he's transfers to Spain Park, and I'm like, oh, that kid with that raw ability at that young age, he's going to go play with a guy like Brock Bradley. We're about to see numbers. And there was hardly a disappointment this year. They were fantastic, and like you said, 1,400 yards and 17 touchdowns, and he's got another year next year. We have a lot of guys coming back under the Lights umbrella that were show outs this year, and we expect more of the same next year, and he's one of them.
Yeah, side note, I think that's one of the really cool things. Looking back at last year's team, the first team was almost exclusively seniors.
Yeah.
And you had a whole first team to replace more or less. And we replaced them with a lot of guys this year that have got some runway left. So it's going to be really cool to see a lot of these names go back to back. But another first team wide receiver, Homewood's Kylan Newell, goes over 1,000 yards, scores 8 touchdowns for the Patriots. A really good season for him, and Homewood was pretty stout.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned those stats, but 17.5 yards per catch. Yeah, that's explosive, and that's kind of the word we use for that Homewood offense all year, and he was certainly just a massive part of that.
Yes, he was. And then another breakout star for the year, Oak Mountain wide receiver Zach Fitzgerald is a first-teamer. 51 catches, 904 yards as a senior, especially the start of the season. Man, he was on fire to get it going.
Yeah, I mean, if I say that about Kylan with 17.5 yards per catch, I think those numbers work out for Zach to 17.7 yards per catch. So, also incredibly deserving, and a guy who was, score from anywhere on the field. Doesn't matter how far, they were making big plays all year. So well earned.
The next guy, I didn't even mention a position for him because it's like, I don't know what you call him. For the purposes of this team, we called him a tight end, but he's like an H-back. He's a fullback. He's a tight end. He's a receiver. He's a lineman. He's everything. And it's Bruce Littleton from Vestavia Hills. Over 1,000 all-purpose yards for a guy that is just kind of a do-it-all. He does the dirty work. He's impossible to tackle, but he's got great ball skills. He runs it well. He catches it out of the backfield. He did literally everything for this Vestavia Hills offense, and definitely deserving of a first-team honor.
Yeah, he's truly a baseball guy, but he is a 5-tool guy on the football field. So you had to have him somewhere, and you had to have him somewhere on the first team. And, I think that's a good spot. Like you mentioned, Coach Robert Evans calls him H-back, and, you've got him listed here at tight end. I mean, 46 catches for 578 yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, that's solid enough on its own, but then you combine the rushing attempts and all the other things that you mentioned as well. So he was going to find his way onto this first team regardless of the slot.
Absolutely. All right, so we've got 5 offensive linemen on the first team. We'll run through those real quick. Mountain Brook's Daniel Ellis allowed no sacks. He was part of the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game. Walker Williams from Homewood only allowed 1 sack on the year. Mason Holloway from Hewitt-Trussville, 2-year starter, top lineman for the Huskies, played a little defensive line too when they needed. J.D. Livingston from Vestavia Hills graded out at 91% on the year. And then you have Hoover's Trot English. He was also in the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game, but a really good group of guys that spearheaded some really good offenses.
Yeah, for sure. Well-deserving for all of them. And, they don't necessarily get the mentions, during the season and that kind of thing. So, and they should. It's just, covering these games, it's hard. It's hard to make note of offensive line things happening, but glad that they get this recognition now because they deserve it.
Absolutely. All right, we've got 2 athletes to put on the first team. First one is Briarwood's Luke Reynolds, who, if you've seen him with your own eyes, he is one of the best football players in Class 5A, period. Did a little bit of everything. He really only played 5 full games, and he scored 16 touchdowns in those 5 games. And in those 5 games, Briarwood went 5-0. And without him, they went 0-5. So that says about all you need to know about this guy.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say it. I think he should be a 5A All-State player, having just played 5 full games. I mean, I think his impact is felt that much. You went through the numbers. I mean, 0-5 mostly without him, and then 5-0 with him, and he put up crazy numbers on offense and played some defense to boot. So that guy is one of the best football players I've ever seen.
Same. The other first-team athlete, we're going to give this one to Hoover's Mac Beeson. When you think of the term athlete, you kind of think multiple positions is usually how that's described. Well, Mac Beeson, if you paid attention, he was Hoover's quarterback. He's also a pretty dang good punter for the Bucks this year. He throws for over 2,300 yards and 19 touchdowns. He could pick up yards on the ground when he needed to as well. And he averaged 35 yards per punt, which in high school football, that's pretty good for anybody, let alone the starting quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this throughout the year too. Like he made some mistakes at times, some turnover stuff. I know I mentioned that several times, but you really got to think. He still led the team to the Class 7A semifinals. Hoover wins 10 games. It was his first year playing at Hoover, so he's coming into some new guys and stuff like that. And it seemed like he kind of won the team over really quickly. And he had a fantastic year for a team that could have struggled, but certainly did not. And he was obviously kind of the leader of that from an offensive standpoint.
All right, on to the special teams guys. First team kicker, Whit Armistead from Homewood, 9 of 11 field goals this year with a long of 42 yards. Hit a ton of extra points too because that offense was so good. Play some tight end as well. He can do a lot of things for that Homewood offense.
Yeah, great kicker. He's been a great kicker for a while.
First team punter, Vestavia Hills, Owen Simpson. This guy, the best punter I saw all year. I mean, like, you don't normally consider a punter a weapon in high school football. This guy could flip the field. He averaged 45.5 yards per punt, and he didn't miss a single extra point all year. Not bad.
Yeah, I mean, my notes that I wrote down, I'm not afraid to say this, the biggest X factor in Central Alabama, any classification. I mean, he was, like you said, 48 extra points, every single one of them split, punted for nearly a 46-yard average. I mean, he was flipping the field. And, you get into a schedule like Vestavia Hills played, and field position becomes a crazy big deal. And, he was the guy flipping it for him.
One more specialist to put on the first team, and we've had some discussion amongst some coaches over the last couple of years. We're putting Chelsea's Jackson Kalnoski on the first team, long snapper, no bad snaps in 3 years as a starter, snapping for the punts and the field goal teams. Great job, Jackson. He's rated as a 4.5 star kicker or specialist, long snapper. So, Gary, I know you've got a full evaluation of Jackson's skill set there, but first team because very deserving guy too.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I didn't see Chelsea this year, but that's really cool. I mean, no bad snaps in 3 years. I mean, that's unbelievable. So you got to find a spot for a guy like that for sure.
Absolutely. So that's the first team offense. Let's move on to the first team defense. We'll do this with 4 defensive linemen, 4 linebackers, 4 defensive backs, and a couple of athletes to encompass that whole team. We'll start on the D-line. Briarwood's Garrett Witherington, a first-team player, 13 tackles for loss, 19 quarterback pressures, doing all of those things while being the focal point of every opposing offense for Briarwood. Garrett's got one more year, and he's going to be a pretty nice college prospect here.
Yeah, and I mean, he also played a little bit of blocking tight end and some of their run heavy type stuff that Coach Forrester likes to run. So yeah, great prospect. And just a very quick story. Like, I remember meeting him either as a 8th grader or as a freshman out at Vestavia Hills High School. Christopher Vazina, that's now quarterback at Clemson, that quarterback at Briarwood, he was with Garrett, came up to me and said, "How old do you think he is?" I was like, 30. And he was like, he's 14 years old. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. So he was like, keep your eye on this guy. And we're seeing that now, and we will see it again next year. Absolutely.
Another first team D lineman, Chelsea's Romello Cooper, had a big year, 56 tackles, 11 TFLs, 7.5 sacks. Definitely one of the leaders of that Hornets defense.
Yeah, he'll be remembered for a while at Chelsea. He signed with Samford. Do I have that right?
Yes.
He'd signed with Samford. Yeah, that he was a disruptor, man. Well earned for a defense that at times, depending on the opponent, they might have struggled at times, but some of those close games they had, especially early in the year when they started off 6-0, the defense really came up big when it needed to, and he was certainly a really big part of that.
Absolutely. Another guy, Colton McIntyre from Clay Chalkville. Did I read that he's just a sophomore?
Yeah, I was told I can't remember if it was like right before the season started or it was probably very early in the season. It might have been when they played Ramsey out at the Old Gray Lady. He was pointed out to me and said that kid's a sophomore. Remember his name because he's going to make a name, and here he is.
Yeah, had 8 sacks this year. Great year for him. One more defensive lineman, Pa Drama from Hoover, 50 tackles, 5 sacks. That Hoover defense was really good, and number 9 was quite a force for them.
Yeah, great year for a guy that stood out on a physical front for that Hoover defense. So really good year.
We'll move on to the linebackers now. Let's start with a first-team linebacker, Grayson Bruno from Vestavia Hills. He led the team in tackles this year with 89. They were missing one of their key pieces in the middle, and Grayson Bruno really stepped up and had a great year.
Yeah, was that Jacob Watson that they were missing for a while?
Yeah.
And I mean, anytime you're the leading tackler on a defense, that means something, and especially playing the middle. So he was all around the ball against, like we've talked about ad nauseum, against a schedule that's one of the toughest we've ever seen, and he stood out on that defense. So kudos to Grayson for a great season.
Next linebacker is going to be Hoover's Cameron Torbor, 89 tackles, 8 sacks. This guy is a dominant force. It seems like Hoover's got a few of those on that defense. They're a pretty intimidating bunch.
Yeah, I mean, a stat sheet stuffer, like you said. What'd you say? 89 tackles, a lot of tackles for loss, 8 sacks. I mean, just a key contributor, a key cog in the middle of that defense. And defense was really stingy, and he was just another one of these key cogs in the middle of it that helped them get to the semis.
All right, another linebacker, this one from Clay Chalkville, Nicarius Allen, 76 tackles, 8 sacks. This Clay Chalkville defense was really good yet again.
Yeah, he's been a leader on that defense, and we talk a lot about Clay Chalkville as a defensive unit as a whole being so athletic, fast, physical, and he's the definition of those attributes from a linebacker position. And I can't remember where he's going at the next level, or if he's decided yet. I don't know. I can't remember, but he's a guy with a high motor and a really deserving player, and plays hard and plays fast.
Absolutely. So one more, that would be Hewitt Trustful's Denarius Woogie Crawford, 91 tackles, and he broke up 5 passes. You got to be flying around the field if you're going to break up passes as a D lineman. I guess you're getting those hands up in the air at the line.
Yeah, this seems like a guy that's another one of these people at one of these players at Hewitt Trustful that maybe you don't quite know the name yet. Like everybody knows Parker Floyd, everybody knows some of these other names, some that we'll be getting to shortly. But that's a name that you're going to continue to hear, and this is a great honor for him for a great year on a fantastic defense.
Moving along to defensive back, we've got 4 of those on the first team. We'll start with Spence Hanna from Vestavia Hills, one of the top producers for that defense. He had 88 tackles on the year. We had him on the podcast earlier, so obviously that was a big notch in his belt. But great year for Spence.
Yeah, I mean, did I read right? It was 50 solo tackles at defensive back. I mean, if it's 50 and if those are all solo, I mean that just means you're getting after it as a DB. So great career for him, and a leader, not just for that defense but for that program. So good to see him land here in this spot.
Absolutely. Moving on, Mountain Brook's Harris Crumpton is a first-team DB, 90 tackles. He broke up 4 passes along the way as well.
90 tackles as a DB?
You bet.
Enough said. I mean, that's unbelievable. So yeah, he's right where he needs to be on this defense.
Sure is. Another one, Xavier Starks from Clay Chalkville. He had 70 tackles on the year, and I remember seeing him return a kickoff for a touchdown against Gadsden City in the playoffs. This is a guy that was, if the ball got in his hands, you better look out. And yeah, he was definitely a really good force in that back end for Clay Chalkville as well.
Yeah, just a prototypical kind of Clay Chalkville athlete that we've come to know over the last decade plus. A lot of tackles, a lot of playmaking ability, And I think as long as he keeps doing what he's supposed to be doing, I mean, this is a guy that's probably going to be one of your top defenders in Birmingham next year. So this is a great honor for him now, but I expect to see even more honors for him this time next year because I think he's due for a big senior season.
All right. One more defensive back, Will Phillips from Hewitt Trustful. He had 52 tackles on the year. He returned punts. He was really good at that too. But just one of the top guys on the outside for that Hewitt defense.
Yeah, he seems like a guy that if he hasn't been considered a breakout guy yet, his name's going to be known everywhere next year. Like he's already got, he's getting D1 offers, kind of like I said about Parker Floyd. I mean, he's just a ball player. Just stick him out there and let him do his thing. And he's a really good defensive back. He can return some punts. He can play receiver. Just put him on the field and let him make a play. And another guy that I expect to see right back here next year.
We've got two athletes. They come from the same team, so we'll just cover them both here at the same time. Parker Floyd from Hewitt Trustful, Defensive Player of the Year, and then Michael Igbenogany from Hewitt Trustful, Tulane signee. He scored 4 offensive touchdowns, deflected 3 passes, and makes plays on special teams. Guys everywhere for the Huskies.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to not be a standout with that last name when you come from that family. His older brother Noah Igbenogany was great for Hewitt Trustful about a decade ago. That's crazy, a decade ago. And Michael's just kind of following in Big Bro's footsteps and had a great year. Had some injuries at times. Didn't play the full year, but certainly did enough on that defense to earn this spot. So. Well deserved for him, and obviously well deserved for Parker as well. That defense was elite.
Yes, it was. So that is your first team. Offense, defense, all the guys that we are honoring with the first team honors for the All-South Metro team. Now let's move along to the second team. Got another same, groupings, same number of guys with each position. We'll run through the list here and kind of set the stage here for the second team. We'll start on offense. A couple of quarterbacks. You've got Homewood's Will Myers, who threw for over 1,100 yards and had 19 total touchdowns. And Clay Chalkville's Aaron Fry goes over 2,000 yards through the air and 20 total touchdowns in his first year as a starter.
Yeah, that's both those guys are deserving. Will Myers had some injury stuff late, but he's a true dual threat guy. You mentioned what he threw for, but he also averaged 7 yards a carry when he toted the rock. So he could do it all. And then Aaron Fry, more than showed flashes in his first year as a starter. And I expect to see him come back next year as a really hungry quarterback and probably one of the best quarterbacks in Central Alabama.
2 running backs on the second team. Dakari Shanks from Spain Park runs for nearly 1,300 yards, scores 13 touchdowns. And Clay Chalkville's Aaron Osley, one of 4 backs in our area to eclipse 1,000 yards on the ground.
Yeah, I like both of these picks because I see them kind of similarly. Like I like Dakari and Aaron are both just kind of Mr. Reliable. Like, Clay Chalkville kind of had some sputterings at times this year on offense, but you when in doubt, you could give the ball to Aaron and he's going to make a play. Spain Park didn't really struggle at offense like all year, but still he get 1,300 yards and 11 touchdowns. For maybe the best Spain Park team we've ever seen potentially. So both of those guys really deserving.
We've got 3 wide receivers. Let's start with Aubrey Walker from John Carroll. Plays both ways for those guys. 658 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. Great year for him. Dylan Cope from Hewitt Trustful is another one. He had 500 yards through the air, scored 5 times. And C.J. Durbin of Chelsea, one of their top targets, he caught 53 passes for 576 yards. If you got all 3 of those guys on your team, you're doing all right.
My gosh, like, could you imagine having like a Dylan Cope that like, hey, if you need something back at the end zone, go up high, you've got Dylan. You need a burner, you've got Aubrey. You need a guy to make a catch in crunch time, you got CJ. Like, this team would be crazy. So good to see all those guys get mentioned. Aubrey, like you said, I still think he's one of the least talked about guys in Birmingham that is one of the best players or all around players. And Dylan at Hewitt-Trussville, we keep seeing that potential really come to fruition, especially as the year went along, making some really big plays out on the outside. And then CJ was, that was Miller Bauman's favorite target, really took some of the pressure off of running back Chase Strasner when they needed to throw the ball. And he was a sure hands guy.
Now, our second team tight end is Clay Chalkville's Jabari Staples. How about catching 24 passes and a third of them going for touchdowns? He scored 8 touchdowns and caught the ball 24 times.
Yeah, he dealt with some injury stuff late, but I know that Jabari was a leader on this team, and like you said, I mean, he made a big impact early in this season. Great high school player. I've talked to him some in the past, like in the middle of this year, and really just a really good kid. Has his head on straight, knows the importance of academics, and just a really smart player. And now when you get inside the white lines, he wants to defeat you. But one of the nicest kids that I've met, and one of the best playmakers around.
All right, we'll run through our 5 offensive linemen here on the second team. Oak Mountain's Bradley Hazlett, Mountain Brook's Rocco Gray, Hoover's Toby Richard, Vestavia Hill's Landon Page, and John Carroll's Anthony Mokry, all worthy. But let me point you to Landon Page. This guy, the right guard for the Rebels, a road grader in every sense of the word, and they made sure to get him a touchdown this year. There is a photo of this guy being hoisted in the air by his fellow O-lineman. You see the running backs get lifted all the time. Well, Landon scored, and he got hoisted, and we got a photo of that too. And really cool for a group of guys that doesn't always get the love.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing we said about the first team. Like you don't really get a whole lot of recognition for linemen, offensive or defensive, during the year. Certainly offensive. They're not recovering as many fumbles as defenders. They're not accumulating sacks. They're just their stuff is knockdowns and pancakes, and these guys certainly had their fair share of those. So good to see them all get recognized here at the end of the year.
A couple of second team athletes. First off, Hoover's Jonah Winston. I think he played every single position except O-line for this team. He scored 5 touchdowns on the ground. He caught 3 touchdowns. He played some quarterback. Big time year for him. And then Vestavia Hills quarterback Charlie Taff. Nearly 2,500 total yards. He really came into his own as a true quarterback this year. But man, he can. He had some games where he'd run the ball 20 times and really do it all on the ground for the Rebels too. So kudos to both of them for a great year.
Yeah, I mean, is it crazy to think that like Jonah could be a back of the year type next year, and then Charlie the year after that be a back of the year type? Because I think both of these guys, kind of, the stats you've mentioned, the ability to do multiple things, like Charlie especially just strictly playing quarterback, but his ability to run the ball. Both of these guys are going to put up numbers again next year and be just paramount guys for their teams. So I think they're in great spots here, and I would look for next year for them to maybe even move up to that first team.
Time for the special teams, guys. We'll start with the second team kicker, Josh Renfro from Oak Mountain. He was 27 of 30 on his extra points, 5 of 8 on his field goals. The longest one, a 43-yarder that beat Chelsea in the regular season finale. Really cool to see that. Good season for Josh. And at punter, you've got Hewitt-Trussville's Drew Ollis. This guy's been a great defender. I mean, he plays defense. I mean, he plays on the D-line for the Huskies, but he has really become a weapon as a punter. Averaged nearly 40 yards per punt. And then another long snapper. We're giving a specialist spot to Homewood's Hardy Butler. The junior is also a 4.5 star guy. He's been rated one of the top in his class, like nationwide. So the specialists getting some love on the second team here.
Yeah, I know the Butler family knows how to play special teams. That's for sure. We know that, and that just blows my mind about Drew Ollis, because we see certain schools that don't have strictly a punter or a really good athlete quarterback. They just have to have somebody go kick the ball, and when it's a lineman type, you get accustomed to seeing some shanks here and there, right? And a D lineman averaging nearly 40 yards a punt. Come on. That's crazy. So kudos to him. And then Josh Renfro at Oak Mountain. I mean, you beat your rival with a 43-yard game-winning field goal. You belong on the team.
Absolutely. So that's your second team offense. Well, let's list the second team defense here as well. We've got 4 defensive linemen. Oak Mountain's Ethan Walton, 16 tackles for loss on the year. Mountain Brook's Boyd Cooper had 11 quarterback pressures, 3 forced fumbles. Hoover's Justin Hartley had 7 sacks. I know he had a scoop and score at one point in the middle of the year. And Clay Chalkville's Patrick Smith, one of the most talented guys on that Clay Chalkville defense, he had 6 sacks on the year.
Yeah, all just disruptors that wreaked havoc. You look at Ethan Walton; those are crazy numbers, for anybody. But that defense largely struggled all year, and he was a hugely bright spot. And the other schools have traditionally really good defenses, so those are guys that are standing out on those defenses. So all of them deserving in their own way.
4 linebackers to go through. Mountain Brook's Hampton King, 66 tackles, including 10 TFLs. Chelsea's Briston Harden had 128 total tackles. Big number there. 5 pass breakups. He just did everything for that Chelsea defense. Homewood's Trust Darnell really stepped into a void and became a leader for that defense. He had 96 tackles on the year. And then Spain Park's EJ Curley led our area with 140 tackles on the year.
That's like more than 400 tackles or something for 4 guys. So, I mean, that's a swarming bunch right there. Wildly productive. And for all these guys to be on second team just speaks to how good our area play was on that first team at this linebacker spot. So all of these guys, my gosh, those numbers are crazy. And we saw these names in a lot of game stories this year from the defensive side, and good to see their names one more time now that the season is over.
Absolutely. 4 defensive backs here on the second team. Homewood's CJ Tidmore, 78 tackles. Clay Chalkville's Dion Callens had 60 tackles. Briarwood's Sam Canale, as a sophomore, really came on toward the end of the year. He's a great football player. He had 3 interceptions. Be on the lookout for him the next couple of years. And Spain Park's Joe Cross, 5 interceptions. They all seem to be in key moments. So pretty good for those guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think CJ Tidmore, I think I saw really, really step up in a big leadership kind of way in that playoff game against Athens after we saw, that unfortunate injury in that game. He really seemed to step up and help close that one out for Homewood. Dion Callens, I've heard about him for a couple of years now. Great tackler. Ball is not thrown his way. You've told me all about Sam Canale, so I'm just going to rest on that for him. Only a sophomore, man. That potential is sky high for him. And yeah, like you mentioned, Joe Cross. I think I saw one of those interceptions maybe against Russell County in that playoff game. And yeah, it did seem like, when Spain Park did make a big stop or had a key moment, Joe Cross was somewhere in the middle of it.
2 more guys to honor on the second team as athletes. We'll start with Hoover's Jamar Moultrie, DB, return specialist for these guys. I think he had more impressive stats last year, and I think the reason for that is people quit throwing to him this year. And then you've got Briarwood's Rylan Ham, who led the Lions with 78 tackles on the year. Just a good football player for those guys.
Yeah, Rylan, leading tackler. I mean, just a great high school player. We've heard his name for a couple years and just kind of solid all the way around. And then, like you said, with Jamar Moultrie at Hoover, yeah, we didn't see his name as much in 2024 as we did 2023. But sometimes when you're a DB type and your name isn't seen, that speaks to your success. And then he turns around. Was it the North-South game that he got the pick 6 and MVP, or was that Alabama-Mississippi? I'm getting them mixed up, but he had some big accolade in one of those games.
Yep. So those are all the guys that are on the first or second team. Several more are on the honorable mention list that will be released online in addition to this podcast video. But Gary, it's been a great season. It's great to honor these guys. I'm glad we could give them some shout outs and talk about them a little bit. But Yeah. So you have this video. It'll be in the whatever website you consume your favorite school's team, whether that's 280 Living, Hoover Sun, Vestavia Voice, Village Living, Homewood Star, Cahaba Sun. The team will be on there in its totality. But we wanted to give you guys the first glimpse, first chance to check out who was going to be on the All South Metro team. Gary, I'm sure I left somebody off, and I'll probably hear about it.
Pitchforks are coming.
But in the meantime, it's been a terrific football season. We want to thank all of you for following along, for listening, for reading, for just all the comments. I love going out to games and places, and a coach will, give us grief over something we said, which is a good thing because it means that you guys are tuning in. So we really appreciate that. Big thanks to SYNLawn for partnering with us all season long as well. It's been a good ride.
It has. I mean, I think, at the start of this year, we said, I think we try to keep up with our years. And I think this was like my 17th or something like that, covering high school football. And I hope to keep doing it. You never know what the future is. But I love doing it. And I love the relationships part of it. I love that, I love that when I talk with Stuart Floyd at Clay Chalkville, we hardly talk football. We talk about golf. I love the joking back and forth with Coach Vikakis about the weight room, and as much as it pains me to say it, talking politics with Coach Evans at Vestavia Hills. Joking, but just love the relationship side of it, and and how we cover these schools. I joke about the pitchfork and stuff like that, because there's always one person that will say, well, why didn't you do this versus that? But at the end of the day, this is a good thing for all these schools, all these players, all these coaches. And I think you do it the right way. And I think you did a great job with this year's team.
Well, thank you, Gary. Thanks for your help with it. Thanks to all the coaches for their input and nominations as well. So with all that being said, 2024 in the books. We'll be rolling out some highlights, some look backs, some flashbacks. As we here at Under the Lights, we'll be moving on to other sports with full-fledged basketball season. So we'll see. We'll have plenty more coming. But until next time, that's what we've got. That's your All South Metro team. Hopefully you agree with most of it and disagree with some of it. That means we're doing things right. So thanks for listening, and see you next time.